point, and I'm just gonna, I know I do it. I'm from Oklahoma, I talk lazy, I know I talk lazy, I try not to. If you don't understand me, say, what did you just say? I will repeat it. Alright? Good?
Good.
Good, good. Good. What, does anybody know, what do we know about psychology? We got any psych grads here? What do we got? We got a, kind of, sort of?
No.
I had like a minor in psychology, kind of. Not really.
That counts.
It's like a mini minor, really.
A mini minor, you took a couple of classes and
Yeah.
you're like, I don't want to have to actually talk to somebody to get that minor, so I'm just I have a mini minor in film, so I get
five
to.
of those.
Yeah. So obviously people are pretty interested in it. Like we got a pretty good turnout already, and we'll get more as it goes on. Psychology is in every single thing that is in everything. All right. If you go outside and you look at a rock, there's psychology to that rock. It has nothing to do with the rock. It has to do with the fact that you are looking at the rock. So what I see when I look at a rock is different from what you see it when you look at a rock. All based on psychology. Now, whether it's environmental or developmental or all of those things that I know about because I spent a lot of money to learn about psychology to tell you guys about it for free, is, based on opinion. But psychology is in everything. And I like to take my very expensive education and put it into everything that I read and watch and play. Obviously, we know a little bit about Tales of here. And there's lots of layers to it, so there's lots of context to psychology. So today we're going to kind of consider what are we looking at when we're writing a well-developed character, and what makes a person well-developed versus, two-dimensional, because we talk about it a lot, like what is a well-written character and what is a realistic character. But I don't know about you guys, I've met some really dense people who have the depth of, I was going to say this water, because water can hold something, but they do exist, these really shallow people. Even those shallow people aren't even really that shallow. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works, how something like even being really attractive can be a character trait that affects how somebody develops through their life. I don't know if you guys knew this, if you're attractive, like, what's the word I'm looking for, socially attractive, you're more likely to be smart. I don't know if you guys knew that stat. We have this stereotype that if you're ugly, you're smart, and that's not the case. So, yeah, fun fact. All right, we good? Gouda, any questions? All right. I hope not, because we have an hour and we're not there yet. All right, so credentials, who am I? My name is Haley Dixon. I'm a working therapist in Oklahoma. I have a Case Manager 2 license. I have a master's in mental health counseling and a bachelor's in psychology. Now, master's in mental health counseling is different than a master's in psychology. I want to just state that straight out. Psychology is counseling and research, and mental health counseling is strictly counseling. I see people all week long. I look at my phone the entire time I'm here because whenever I have to go out, I have to make sure that my people are not dying. So there's a lot kind of riding on my ability to talk and, I don't want to say analyze, but be able to be there for people on a counseling level. So I'm also a novelist. I wrote a book. I just won a writing contest today, which was pretty nice.
Oh, cool.
I know, yes. And I'm a total dork. So that's why we're here today. I have a Tumblr dedicated to different things that I've written. I've written meta-analysis on Tony Stark and his daddy issues, to, writing contest entries, to all sorts of stuff. And then there's also the Radiant programming director thing that I do here. Anybody have any questions on what this stuff means?
What does LPC stand for?
Licensed Practitioning Counselor.
Okay.
Yes. So an LPC is different from a PsyD. So a PsyD is somebody who has a doctorate in psychology. They cannot prescribe medication.
Ah.
Psychiatry is the ones that can do that.
Mm.
I did try to go into psychiatry, and then I saw what pre-med looked like, and I decided I wasn't there yet. I didn't actually hate myself that much when I was 18, so I didn't go into pre-med. So, all right, so case conceptualization. Anybody hear of this word before? Alright, so a case conceptualization is something that a counselor therapist does whenever somebody walks into a room. So if you go into a counselor's office, they'll do something called an intake. An intake takes about an hour and 30 to 2 hours. It should take 2 hours or more every single time. I work in Oklahoma, so insurance companies don't really pay for mental health. So ours tend to be on the short side. Ideally, you would want to do this in 2 hours. A case conceptualization is where you sit down, and I don't know how many of you have ever gone to therapy. I'm not going to ask because that would be a huge breach of like personal boundaries. But they'll ask you basic information. What is your, obviously what's your name, what's your age, what is your ethnicity, how many parents do you live with, are they deceased, are they non-deceased, and while they're doing this, they're recording how you're acting. So if somebody comes into my office, and I say this, it sounds very mature, like there's not a giant Iron Man on the wall, but it's still my office. So if somebody comes into my office, and I work primarily with teenagers, I should have mentioned that before, and they say something like, all right, Johnny Walker over here is 16, and he's in my office because he, I don't know, what did Johnny Walker do? Just throw it out, because I don't want to say something on accident.
Robbed a bank.
All right, Johnny Walker robbed a bank. All right. So Johnny Walker comes into my office, the court probably sent him there, he robbed a bank. I'm like, all right, Johnny Walker, what's going on? Johnny Walker tells me, he's like, oh, well, both of my parents are together, and we live in a really nice house, and I get really good grades in school, and so on and so forth. That's probably not what Johnny Walker looks like, all right? Johnny Walker's not going to look like that. And we all know that, but we don't know innately why that is. So if Johnny Walker came in, and he's 16 years old, and he robbed a bank, and his parents are well off, I know something about Johnny Walker as opposed to if he came in and his parents didn't have any money and he robbed a bank to, feed himself. These are different scenarios, and that's different psychology. This is where we start getting into writing, all right? I don't know how many, who is a writer? This is a much less personal question than who has gone to therapy. All right, yeah, we got quite a few. So I don't know if you guys have ever written your own characters, but a lot of times there will be these memes that'll go around of, well, this is the characteristics that you need to know in order to write a well-developed character. And it's like, what is their favorite color, and what is their favorite ice cream, and and that kind of stuff might be important to you, but if it's important to you, it's probably important to you because you have a psychological implementation of what that means to you, all right? So if I write a character and I'm like, well, my character's favorite superhero is Iron Man, I know what that means because my favorite superhero is Iron Man, and I have a assigned meaning to it, all right? So all of these things we've got here, I'm pointing at my computer like you can see it and you can't. All of these things are something to take into how people react to. In the case of writing, we're going to call it plot movement. In the case of therapy, we call it the trauma, quite honestly. People don't go to therapy if things are going well, more often than not. So that's where we're going to connect the dots. And what I'm going to show you here is basically how do we turn a case conceptualization of a therapist in order to help somebody overcome mental health problems. How do we turn that into writing a character that can hit that arc of a plot? All right, make sense? Mm-hmm. It'll make more sense as I talk, I promise. And I'm trying really, really hard to not, but I'll fess up to having some like compulsive things that I will keep looking over there. If I get off track, try and remind me. All right. So how many of you guys played Life is Strange? Yeah, one? Okay. One also did, and she walked out, so whatever. I'm not going to get too into spoilers with anything in this panel, by the way, other than I think I did a whole thing on Thor and Loki, but that's not till the end. I'm very predictable. So we have developmental and cultural identity, all right? So in this case, I'm using two sets of characters. I'm using Chloe from Life is Strange and her mother, and I'm using Celeste and Zelos Wilder from Tales of Symphonia. The difference here being a couple of things, their roles. So Chloe is a daughter, and her mother is obviously her mother. you have age, you have generational things. You also have the fact that Chloe and her mother have different layers of trauma. Can we all still hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Chloe loses her father, and are you going to shut it a little bit? I don't want them to burn to death. That's my fear. It's really hot on that side of the building.
Oh,
so that's
yeah.
what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was sitting there.
Like, can you guys be quiet? We're trying to learn. No. Thank you, Christy.
Don't
put it
squish
all
your
the way.
hands.
That's probably fine.
You guys need a temperature adjustment?
No, it's just they're really loud, and I'm trying to be boring and educational. Yeah, it's not. It should be fine. Oh, there it goes.
I'm here with Chrissy.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you. But there's a difference in roles, all right? So a mother, everybody has, parents to a point, whether or not you live with them or whether or not you have grandparents that fill that role or you have adopted parents. We all
We're
have
not a
them.
Tails character.
Yeah, we're not a Tails character. Most of us have parental figures. If we don't, we're probably screwed up because of it. Not because there's anything inherently wrong with not having parents, but if you're in a society where you have them most of the time and you don't have them by being different, it messes you up. Let's admit that. So Chloe and her mother go through the exact same trauma technically. The same person dies to both of them at the exact same time. Now the reason we have to think about this, if Chloe came into my office, her dad died, all right? Her dad died when she's 14. I'm looking at you, Jay. How old is she? I think 14. 14. This is my source. So she's 14 and her father dies. All right, she acts out. 14. All right. God. Sometimes I say things and I'm like, I gotta pull up my degree. All right. The brain continues to develop until you're 25. All right. I don't know if you guys knew this. Lots of things can impact it, whether or not it's if you do substances or anything like that. Great amounts of stress will actually change the way that your brain is physiologically formed. And that's why we see things like, I call it the shortcut route, where basically when your brain does something, so this is how addiction happens. If every time I'm stressed out, I go and I grab a drink, it's faster for me to go and grab the drink. All right, because my brain has realized that it's going to be a solution to my problem. Now, this continues to happen, and my brain keeps going there because the brain is trying to spend less and less energy. If my brain learns, well, if I have a beer when I'm stressed and I get less stress, then I should go have a beer when I'm stressed, it's going to keep doing it until, oh boy, now I have to go see Haley. And this is kind of what happens. It's a lot easier to make that shortcut whenever you're a teenager, because you don't have all of that, you don't see a whole lot of mental breakdowns happen, or schizophrenic, psychotic breakdowns happen to people in their 50s, all right? A lot of times we see schizophrenia, most of the time actually, happen in our 20s because it's the time where we're physiologically changing the most, so we have these major spurts of, okay, I'm a kid and now I'm technically an adult and my brain is developing almost all the way and now I can drink legally, which a lot of people are like, woo, and they drink all the time. And then you also have the aspect of culturally, a lot of people move out, they go to school, all sorts of stuff. They have to take care of themselves sometimes. Lots of stuff go into it. And then there's culture. Some people don't move out. So there's that. So Chloe loses her dad. She starts acting out. She's got blue hair. She looks like a punk. She's a punk. I don't know if you guys have played the game. She's a punk. She's a well-written punk. She's very realistic. I work with a lot of teenagers like Chloe that are very disgruntled, who do not have the abilities and the experience to cope with the stress that they have. So they act out more because they're trying really, really hard, almost like babies eating rocks, but not, because babies put things in their mouths to learn about it. Sometimes teenagers make bad decisions to figure out what happened. And after your dad dies, you're a lot less likely to care about the risk that happens. Chloe's mother, did she work at the diner before she did? All right, so she works at the diner. Her husband dies. He was a nice guy. She goes and she marries this. I got to remember, this is a PG panel, but he's not a super great guy. He's pretty abusive in a lot of ways. Her decision as a mother has to be totaled in because she lost an extra income, she lost the father to her child, and she also lost a huge portion of her life that she had been so invested in. So Chloe's mother has to make huge decisions that Chloe doesn't have to make. So if Chloe comes into my office and her dad died, I treat her way differently than if Chloe's mother comes into my office. And I don't see almost ever a kid and their parent, because they're both reacting extremely differently to the same situation almost every single time. And it's difficult as a therapist to empathize with a client who is a teenager and also their parent, because they're both going through the same thing from totally different viewpoints. Make sense? Feel like I'm talking fast. Am I okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Zelos and Celeste have different mothers, all right? Are we familiar with Tales of Symphonia? Most-ish kind of stuff. I'll give you a rundown. Different mothers, same father, all right? Grew up in different situations, and you have a bloodline issue. Now, obviously it's anime, so they both look like the same. There's not like any kind of real indicator of mixed race, but Celeste is discriminated against because of her identity associated with that race that she is. So even though the same thing happens, Zelos' mother dies, and Celeste's mother is the reason why, the way that they turn and they grow from that, even though they were both children, Celeste was an infant, Zelos was a teenager, they just go completely different paths because of the way that their brain had been developed. And you have to know that. So somebody whose parents die when they're young have to basically create an identity around the fact that they don't have parents. And that's extremely difficult to do. So when you're writing a character, a lot of times when you see orphan characters in media, it's there because, and I think I can say this as a writer, people just don't want to write families. They're boring. They don't tend to give a whole lot of, like, because if you have another conflict over here, like if I'm trying to save the world from aliens, I don't really care about my daddy issues over here. So my dad's dead. Aliens. That's how we do it. And that's fine. That's a trick. You just have to make sure that if you are writing aliens and dad is dead, that your alien conflict is really interesting, because a person that hasn't had like a huge, it's a very easy way to write. Doesn't mean it's bad, just means that if you wanna, it's a preference. That's what I'm gonna say. It's a preference. So, he's a good dad. He's a good dad.
Aww.
I liked him. He was cute, and I was trying to think of fathers, and I could only think of Bowser for some reason.
We got you once.
Yeah. So even though Bowser is a bad guy, he's actually a pretty good dad. Like, he bonds with his kid all the time. Now, what he does is not great. But, they play sports. They go go-karting. Like, they do stuff together. I don't know where the mom is, but, he seems to be doing well as a single dad. So we're okay with it. But here's where this comes in, all right? Bowser and Bowser Jr. are basically the same character. They have the same temperament. They look the same. They both want to, I don't know what they want to do to Mario. I don't really get Mario conflict. They want to beat him at go-karts. So if we have Bowser who has the same temperament as Bowser Jr., they're more likely to get along and they're more likely to have a good relationship. They're also less likely to learn from each other in different ways. So if Bowser Jr. does something, like, let's just use this. If Bowser Jr. goes to school and he punches another kid, Bowser Sr. doesn't really care, because he would probably have done that too. So, whatever. Now, if you have different temperaments, and temperaments are something that we can't really control, if Bowser Jr. goes to school and punches a kid in the face, and say Bowser Sr. was actually Luigi, we'd have a huge discrepancy, and there would be a lot of conflict in the family system, and also a lot of confusion, like species-wise. But because Bowser Jr. is just like his dad and is acting out, he's being encouraged in this way, he will grow up just like this system. Here's where the example gets sad. I'm sorry. It's life. But if my mom is emotionally abused, she's a lot less likely to understand that she's doing something wrong when she talks to her children in such a way that is emotionally abusive. All right, does that make sense? Because if somebody talks to me all the time like I'm garbage, and I talk to somebody else who's garbage, even though I love them, and I think my mom loved me, even though she talked to me like garbage, I'm not going to get how this doesn't work, all right? This is why we see that cycle, people who just abuse and abuse and abuse. It's really, really difficult, very hard to break, and sometimes it's almost, I don't want to say it's not worth it to break, but it's really heart-wrenching sometimes to tell a parent that what they're doing is damaging their child because they learned it from their parents, and then they have to acknowledge the fact that the system that they grew up in was awful and that they in turn hurt their kid. It's really difficult to watch a parent realize what they've done. So this is one of those things that, again, while you're writing, think about, because if there's a ton of conflict with a kid and a father, for example, this is a very common conflict, but kid and father act the same way, that conflict doesn't actually exist, all right? So unless dad is a huge hypocrite, and if dad is a huge hypocrite, you have to acknowledge that in the writing to make it realistic. I'm trying really hard not to be who I am as a person, but I think Tony and Howard Stark are really good examples of this. It's just where my brain goes. But Howard projects a lot of stuff onto Tony, and Tony will sometimes think that he is like Howard, but because he is not, he is incredibly emotionally damaged by his relationship with his dad. Does that make sense? I shouldn't. All right. Any questions on that before I get to this slide? Yeah. All right. We're just going to get to it. You guys familiar with Dream Daddy?
Yeah. The memes. Never played it.
Well, I think on the internet.
Well,
right now.
You can do a really quick one if you just go straight for a robber. But the reason that I bring up Dream Daddy, and the reason that I bring up parents in general, because parents have a huge impact on their kids, Dream Daddy is a really good example of, these are all independent characters that have identities outside of their fatherhood. Now this is a little bit more common. You would probably not see Dream Mommy, maybe somewhere on DeviantArt, but not here yet, all right? Because of the way that we think of roles, we have to acknowledge the fact that, because Robert is a father, all of these guys are fathers, all right? Robert is an alcoholic who has a grown daughter who doesn't have a relationship with him, which is very different than Craig over here, who has infant children, who he has a pretty good relationship with, all right? They're all dads, but they're all different, all right? So we have to acknowledge the fact that we can't simplify to a role. This is me directly and not subtly calling out mom tropes, all right? This is exactly what this is. Mom tropes where mom has a side ponytail and dies in anime is lazy writing. And you can quote me, I don't care. All right? Does that make sense? Any questions? All right. So, socioeconomic status, that's a hard one. We record this in every case conceptualization that we do. All right? Seems really insensitive, and I cannot tell you how many people, I don't want to say lose their mind, but they get really touchy when I say, all right, you just told me all your trauma. How much money do you make a year? And they're like, can I leave? No, you can't. This matters, all right? This matters for a couple of reasons. If I have no money and I ask for a bite of your sandwich, I probably want a bite of your sandwich because I'm hungry, all right? That's fair, right? If I have a lot of money and I ask you for a bite of your sandwich, I'm probably kind of lazy, all right? These are different character traits. So if your character is really rich and is constantly doing things that doesn't correlate with that, it makes your character selfish. So it can be the exact same behavior, but because of the money situation, it's totally different, all right? Bruce Wayne, I almost said Banner. Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark, all right? Dead parents, both pretty traumatized, both have some stuff to work out. Not a therapist in the world that would ever discharge them, all right? These guys have tons of money, tons of cash. And because they have tons of cash, they don't have to worry about, well, sometimes they do, but I'm not going to get into that. They don't have to worry about who's going to pay the bills, all right? A lot of people are already, if mom dies, it sucks, all right? It sucks if my mom dies, because I'm not able to continue a relationship. I have to come to a point where, all right, my parental figure is dead, that relationship has closed, but it will continue to affect me as I grow. That's really difficult for a lot of people to understand. Nobody usually ever does, because it's a really weird, abstract concept. If mom is dead and I don't know how to deal with it, and oh, my electric got shut off, I'm gonna lose my mind. All right. If I already have tendencies that are anxious and depressed, and mom dies and my electric got shut off, can't say shut today, and I lost my job, I'm out. I'm out. All right. This is why we care about socioeconomic status. All right. This is why you should care about it when you write, because it lowers and it heightens the stakes. If my parents, and this is why I think Bruce Wayne and Tony Stark are actually really good examples of very damaged characters, because they are extremely wealthy and they are extremely empty. And you have to emphasize that, because if you have a lot of money, you can deal with all these other things, and then you hyperfixate on the one thing you can't fix. And that is a really interesting dynamic to write if you know that it's there. A lot of people don't. Questions? You guys are just like, yeah, I'll take it. All right. I'm gonna let's just do another synopsis. All right. We familiar with Inuyasha?
Yes.
Yeah. It's okay. Basic thing. Kagome comes back from the present to the past to meet the woman that she has been reincarnated as. All right. So these are technically the same person. Technically. They have the same face, whatever. Affect is extremely important. Affect is the way that you present. So if we were going to describe my affect right now, pretty comfortable talking about this stuff. I know what I'm talking about. And I'm pretty arrogant, so a lot of people don't argue about it. It's fine. This is the way, this is what matters as far as if I come into your room and I tell you, someone give me a situation that is just a situation. I don't even care what it is.
Messy house.
Messy house? Wait, what was the one back there?
Burn popcorn.
Burn the popcorn. All right. I burned the popcorn. No, that's great. This is a really good example because we've all done it before, right? And then your house smells. I hate it. I don't make popcorn because of this. So you burn the popcorn, and someone comes home and they look at you and they're like, "Why did you burn the popcorn?" And they're really aggressive. All right. I already know that that is not someone I want to hang out with. They're really aggressive, and they're probably just not nice. I don't like them. I don't even like them in theory. All right. And if somebody comes in and you burn the popcorn and they're like, "Oh,
sorry.
Why did your phone ring?" You're fine. It gives me a time to drink. Thank you. So sweet. If someone comes in and says, "Oh, I'm really, I'm sorry that you burnt the popcorn. That sucks. That happens to me a lot too. Why don't we go out and do something? Get out of this house. Let's open a window and let's get out and do something. And when we come back, the room will be aired out." Pretty mature person has a pretty calm affect. All right, pretty rational. Well, maybe they're your roommate. I don't know. But you were going to do family movie night or something, and they decided to just, whatever. This is why it matters, all right? The way that we react and the way that we act, a lot of the time, this goes into our temperament. If I can tell pretty much immediately when somebody comes in to see me what their affect is, it's that thing that makes you say, "How are you feeling today? Like, are you tired? Are you happy? Like, are you sad? What's going on with you today?" Most of you guys are pretty, I don't see a whole lot of droopy faces, so I guess I'm keeping your attention all right. But if you came in and you were really tired and you weren't interested in what I was saying, that would be a flat affect. It tells me you're probably thinking about something else, you don't really want to be in this room, and you don't care about what I'm saying. All right. If I'm up here doing a talk, fair, maybe you don't like psychology, I'm not going to be mad at you. If I'm up here naked dancing the hula and you look flat affected, I can tell something right then that you are probably extremely depressed and also very good at not noticing things, or you have been acclimated to this thing before. all right? People dance naked in the hula around you all the time. And that's concerning as a therapist, and that would be something that we would want to talk about, all right? This is why affect matters. So Kagome is from the, not the future, but the present, whatever. Pretty active and pretty animated. She's got a lot of emotion. She hasn't been hardened by life like Kikyo is, who was a priestess. She's a little bit older, but not old enough to really change that affect that much. She lived a totally different life, even though they have technically the same soul. Affect happens for a lot of reasons. It's just what we start to become aware of as our base, all right? So, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have to talk during this entire thing, and I'm just like, it's a lot of talking. All right, I talk a lot. So behavior. Here's something that we need to address as a writing tip, all right? As a therapist, we do this as displayed by or as evidenced by. I don't get to just say you're depressed. I don't get to say it. I could probably do it, but I have to back it up somehow, all right? That's why I had to spend a bunch of money. I have to back it up somehow. So if I say Johnny Walker's not depressed. He robbed a bank. But maybe he is. I don't know. What's wrong with Johnny Walker?
He got caught.
He got caught.
That'll make you sad.
All right. Johnny Walker got caught. All right. So his getting caught is not really what I care about. All right. A lot of parents get really weirded out by the fact that I don't really address that moment change. In plots, we call it the action. All right. In therapy, we call it the change. So I don't really care if Johnny Walker failed his class. I care why Johnny Walker failed his class. Does that make sense? All right? Because Johnny Walker passing his classes doesn't really affect me at all. Johnny Walker wanting to kill himself and feeling so bad about himself that he doesn't want to study for his classes and ending up, acting out so irrationally that he goes and robs a bank concerns me, all right? We have to think of it like this, all right? Dog dies. Owner's anxiety rises, results in panic attacks. Who here has had a dog die? Sucks, right? That was funny. So if your dog dies, can you practically have a panic attack every single time you think about that? Practically. Probably not. You couldn't be in the middle of this panel, because I just mentioned it like 5 times. All right. Now, if you were to go to therapy for something like that, because that's the reaction. That's when we start to realize, ooh, something's going on here. You can't look at a dog without crying, and there's a lot of dogs around. This is not going to work. We have to work on why. Why are we having this reaction? Because panic attacks are there for a reason. All right, so we got to figure out why. Dog dies. Why is that dog important? Some people will cry over goldfish. So, I know, I looked right at you. There's a reason why, all right? You may not think anything of it. Some people flush goldfish down the toilet while they're still alive, all right?
No.
They exist. I saw a video and it really upset me. So,
Me.
I know, I didn't even show you. Right?
Thank you for not doing that.
I know. I didn't show you the next slide, though. It's not the goldfish. I didn't feel like putting in a video. But we need to figure out why it matters. So in writing, we need to figure out, and this is usually where the story develops. And this is where we move to change the action. All right? All of our stories start in such a way that we start with the change. All right? You don't want to start with Johnny Walker over here feeling sad in a story. All right? You want to start with what happened because he felt sad. So we have to understand, yeah, see, I didn't look that time. We need to understand why this matters. Why is this dog important? Is this a Marley and me situation? Like the dog genuinely was your favorite dog on the planet and you were really close and you helped him, grow little whatever, and, he saved you from a burning building? Different. Different than maybe you rescued the dog. All right, you rescued the dog, and the dog helped you get over your alcoholism. We have to figure out why this matters. Because if the dog saved you and the dog died, you don't feel like you can save yourself. Okay? If you saved the dog and the dog died, you don't feel like you can actually save anything. These are two totally separate feelings. And these are just two examples of what you could be feeling. All right? A lot of people have these phrases that they say when they talk about stuff that happens to them. And if you key in on it, you can usually figure it out. A lot of phrases like I hear, I feel trapped, or I work with teenagers, so I hear I got disrespected a lot. Getting disrespected only matters if you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself, because you're trying to change the way that they think. And if you don't have a whole lot of confrontation skills, you usually punch them in the face, because then they'll shut up because you punched them in the face, which is fair, but it's not very practical. And that's what I tell them. It's like, fair, do you want to end up in jail? Usually not. Sometimes they do. You know, what can you do? Questions? Comments?
I love you.
Oh, that's so nice. Let me make sure I'm okay on time. Yeah, I'm okay. Alright.
I didn't do it.
Now we're going to talk about poltergeists.
Oh, God.
Alright.
Is that the grape duck?
Yeah, it's a grape duck.
I knew it.
Alright, so here's something that we, in a case conceptualization, we're always going to look at whether or not we've done previous testing. Alright, this is a little different when we think about it in a writing perspective, but I can make anything work, so we're going to talk about it anyway. Avoiding eye contact can mean a lot of things. Alright, avoiding eye contact is usually a sign of autism, sensory overload, lots of stuff. Depression. Most diagnoses in the DSM-5 will have avoiding eye contact as a symptom. Alright. However, I'm up here right now, all right, and I'm making eye contact with a few people. I'm making eye contact with you because you have a camera that's recording me, so I want to make sure that I'm looking directly at your camera.
Lens contact?
Yeah, see, exactly. If we don't take into consideration that context, it looks like I really like you, and I'm sure you're a great person, and I've talked to you a lot. You are really nice. But at the same time, I'm an arrogant person. So I'm looking at your camera. Right? Context. Context is very important. So we need to know what that means. Eye contact can also mean I am so bored. I don't care. I'm very confident in myself. I don't really care what you're saying right now. It can also mean I have no idea you're talking to me. That happens to me a lot. I have no idea what you're saying. I didn't see you over there. Whatever. Eye contact does not always mean something is happening. Lack of focus. If somebody comes in here, if a kid comes in and he's not going to come in here, but you know what I mean. If a kid comes in and he isn't focusing, all right, you mean a ton of stuff. He could have a brain injury. There are kids that get into car accidents. They have brain injuries. They physically cannot focus on what's in front of them. You are really boring, and the kid doesn't want to listen to you. 3, you are a really bad parent, and the kid doesn't want to listen to you. And this is why we care, like, how does this kid act at school versus how does this kid act at home. 4, kid's super creative, thinking in his head. He's not being challenged. He's just thinking in his head. Whatever. 5, lack of sleep. Is the neighbor next door a crackhead that plays music all night long? He probably doesn't sleep a lot, and he's probably not focusing in class. This is why we have to know about what happened before. And you have to think about the fact that sometimes if a kid's not listening to you, he can't hear you. If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably just a duck. We don't have to overcomplicate the duck. The duck didn't have issues with his parents. The duck is okay. He's just a duck. All right? We don't have to overcomplicate our writing. We don't have to overcomplicate our motivations. We just have to flesh out what we have. I've read incredibly interesting stories, and my favorite book is about a guy who loses his wife. Super interesting. And it's just like a day in the life kind of thing. I love it. I think it's cool. No one else has read it. I like it a lot. So, but it's not overcomplicated. All right? Whatever you have in front of you is what you deal with. Don't drag up everything. This is one of those DeviantArt things that I hate to mention, and it's super fun when you do it the first time. Let's not put everything in the kitchen sink into a story, because then we can't focus. Does that make sense? Yeah. When I write a case conceptualization, I don't put everything that person said to me in there, because it's a lot of information and no one wants to read it. Okay? My supervisor doesn't want to read it. My client doesn't want to read it. No one wants to read it, but I need to know it. Okay?
You don't even want to proofread it.
Yeah, I don't even want to proofread it. Did I make a typo?
I don't see one.
Huh? No, I know I was. I wasn't pointing. I was just gesturing.
Good job.
It's like, listen.
I try.
And see, I'm the type of person that immediately got me like, what are you talking about?
And that's your story or whatever, the hypothetical story, not your PowerPoint.
Good, because I did not proofread this. I could have had a typo. All right.
That doesn't mean it's overcomplicated. I think it's fine so far.
Any questions on that? Cool. I talked a little bit about this. We need to have a reason why we're starting therapy, all right? And this usually confuses people because they'll come in and they're like, well, little Susie has been talking back to me and setting fire to the cats for 5 years. I know, Susie's awful. And I'm like, cool, why now? And they're like, well, she's been doing it for 5 years. And I'm like, cool, but you put up with it for 5 years. So did the cat finally set her on fire back? Like, what's happening here? Why are we starting now? We have to have a reason in writing to start our narrative now. We can't, again, we can't throw the whole kitchen sink into what we're doing. We need to know, what are we doing here? Why does it help us to know what happens here? And usually it's because a major change is about to happen. In therapy, a major attempt to get better is about to happen. Now, this doesn't have to be voluntary. Therapy is not voluntary. A lot of people see me who hate me, all right? And I am a lot, so I'm not mad about it. But this can happen with characters, too. A lot of times you see characters just thrust into a situation, and it's going to change their whole world. Tony Stark.
Yay.
Tony Stark, that boy, that sweet old boy, was the same for a really, really long time, and then he was thrust out of his normal situation into a cave in Afghanistan in the movies. In the comics, it is literally maybe 1 or 2 pages of pre-story, here he is in the cage, or cave. That's what we need. We need that immediate change. So in a story, we need to know why is the change happening, or why is the change about to happen, or trying to happen? And do we care about the change? Is the change... Now, here's the thing about it. The change can be very, very simple. The change can be little... I'm not going to use Susie again, because she's still setting fire to cats. Little Jessica over here has finally started to clean the dishes. All right? That sounds so minor. Sometimes goals can be that. In therapy, sometimes goals can be that. Where it's like, to you, a C might be the end of the world, and you just want to die. And I know some kids that would lose their mind for a D because they finally got above an F. And that journey may not mean something to everybody, but if you write it and you tell me why that journey means something, well, then it's probably a pretty good story. All right? I really want to emphasize right here, I think it's a good point for me to emphasize it right here, not suggesting we exploit individual, trauma. All right? I don't think anybody was thinking that, but I want to just make sure it's explicitly said. Not saying we exploit that stuff. I want us to just understand how change happens and how the journey of a story mirrors how we work as human beings trying to make a change. Good? That's just the thing that I have to put out because I'm putting it out there. It's in, not writing because I didn't write it, but you know what I mean. It's on camera. All right, questions?
How would you do it with, you brought up Tony Stark and he has a major change, but someone like Captain America, he doesn't have that major change. His is more subtle, if anything.
Kind of, sort of, kind of. Alright, risky. Cap has this situation where there isn't technically a change in the fact that he is picked because he's a stoic character that is not changeable. Alright? So Red Skull turns into Red Skull. How familiar are we with Marvel before I get down this rabbit hole?
0.
Okay, alright. Red Skull is somebody who has the exact same thing done to him that Captain America has done to him. Alright? Red Skull was not very nice, so he turned into an ugly dude with like no face. Alright? Good? And he's evil and he's a Nazi. Good? He's like a Nazi or Nazi. Bad guy. Cap has the exact same thing done to him. The reason it doesn't change him is because Cap is what we call a stoic character. His journey is based on the fact that he is not movable. Alright? So while everything else is happening around him, he's rooted into his cause. Cap's change is everything around him. Alright? So Cap's journey actually starts in the Avengers by him being unfrozen. So he has to, and I mean he has a journey in the first Cap, but I'm going to talk about the Avengers just because a lot of people like to get on him for the fact that he doesn't have like a trauma, but he has a major, he's gone from the 40s in the middle of World War II and the Great Depression to the 21st century. That's a huge change. I have grandparents that cannot figure out their iPod, alright? And we're going to talk like this is not a huge change. This is a huge, huge change for him to go through. Everybody he knows is either dead or dying. He is the same, and that's where the trauma happens. That is survivor's guilt. It's all of this stuff. In the first Cap, he is basically constantly reacting. So that's the change. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Alrighty. Who watches Voltron? Me. Yeah, alright. So here's how Voltron works. And I'm using Voltron because this is a cast of extremely diversified characters who have the exact same change happen to them, at least in the first season. I'm busy, so I haven't caught up. Alright? So do not ask me a question that's really recent because I can't answer it. There's a lot of stuff going on here. You have lots of different ages, you have lots of different backgrounds. Intellect really plays in, and Voltron especially. They all have different roles that they play. And Voltron is really good at the fact that not all of them have played those roles before. Keith is a bit of a rascal before he goes in, and then he's given this more noble role. Whereas Shiro has already kind of had that leadership role, and he falls into it nicely. So the way that you rate Shiro having the change of becoming a paladin is different than how Keith does it, because one is acclimated to responsibility and the other isn't. And then you make them fight. It's really fun. And that's what you have to think about. Think about not only how are these guys working independently, but if, like Chloe and her mother that I mentioned earlier, Chloe's mom loses her husband, Chloe loses her dad, they're both traumatized and now fight, alright? And they don't really get along very well, but they have a lot of love, so they get through it. It's just so fun. So, I know, because we're almost at the end. Alright, what does this look like very specifically, as far as what does this written case conceptualization look like? If I had one thing to tell you, when you write, when you want to create a character, when you want to write that start, every single character's change should be the same. The end of every single case conceptualization of every character that you write should be the same change. We're going to use these two boys. Alright? I like them. I think they're neat. And
they're both gorgeous.
yes. And I just think they're cool, and I like them. So, Thor and Loki. Alright? There's one singular change. We're only going to do the first Thor. And basic story, Thor is a prince, Loki is a prince. They have the throne that they've been raised to believe is both of their rights, but Thor is the firstborn. Already, there is family conflict. I have written papers on this. I passed grad school writing about Thor and Loki.
Yahoo!
Yeah, nice. So, this is how it would look. Thor is a 1,500-year-old male of noble descent in the Asgardian royal family. He has 2 living parents and a younger brother. He is also the king's heir. Thor is popular among his people due to his place as a distinguished warrior. Thor displays no pre-existing health problems. though he has a past of aggression. Thor is a skilled warrior, but frequently displays impulsive behaviors regarding fights. These behaviors have been a point of contention in his family and government system. After Thor's coronation was interrupted, there's that typo.
Oh no!
I know! Thor attacked Jotunheim, frost giant world, in an act of war. When confronted, Thor displayed aggressive behaviors and was banished to Earth. What can you guys say is Thor's problem? Real fast.
He's too aggressive.
Yep, I use the word aggression maybe like
Pretty aggressive.
Yeah, he's pretty aggressive. The reason that this is a problem, it's not really a problem later. He's still aggressive in the new movies, all right? His aggression is causing problems in political spheres. This is why it's an issue, because he's supposed to be a king, and he acts like a little boy. All right? 15-year-old, or 15-year-old, woo! 15-year-old male of noble descent. This is his demographic, all right? He's a rich, youngish guy, all right? His family system, 2 living parents, hasn't gone through the trauma. A younger brother, he doesn't really know about that other thing. Also the king's heir. Family system, we already know kind of, he's the favorite. By being the king's heir, he's the favorite, okay? Socioeconomic, he's rich, and he's popular. Everybody likes him. He's super cool, all right? Thor displays no pre-existing health problems, but he has a past of aggression. We know that it's not because of something else. He's not mad because he has a heart condition. That can happen a lot. People get disabled and they get real mad because they have no control. Thor is a skilled warrior. This is his behavior. It's not that he's a skilled warrior that's the problem. It's that he's mean and aggressive. What's the change? The change is the coronation. His coronation was, not war, interrupted, and then he was aggressive. That's our change, all right? Loki. The age is, I'm the only person that cares about the age, I know. It's not right, but I did research, all right? Loki is about 1,100 years old. Male of frost giant descent, he was adopted without his knowledge by Odin and raised as Thor's biological brother. He is the second heir to the throne of Asgard. Loki is prone to dishonesty and jealousy as displayed by, you see that? Tricks and illusions used against his brother. His health is unknown due to the mystery of his biological upbringing. It is reported that Loki previously attacked his adopted brother Thor by stabbing him at age 8. All right? That's important because that's in Ragnarok, yeah.
I thought it was a snake.
He was a snake, and then he turned into him, and he was like, yeah, it's me, and then he stabbed him.
Oh, I missed that last part.
Yeah, shapeshifts and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's me. We were 8 at the time. Loki's jealousy is a point of contention in the family during Thor's upcoming coronation. It's mentioned quite a few times before it happens that Loki's not too cool with it. Loki reports that he desired to prove Thor's unworthiness to the throne and organized the coronation to fail. Still the same change. After Thor's coronation is postponed, there's another typo. Loki escorts him to Jotunheim and discovers that he is adopted. After Thor is banished to Earth, Loki confronts Odin and is declared king. Same change. Same exact change happens. Alright? His demographic, different. Alright? He's in a totally different world. He's a frost giant descent and he doesn't know it yet. Alright? He was adopted without his knowledge. That's dishonesty. He's already got a huge chip on his shoulder and now he's got a reason. Okay? Socioeconomic, he's the second best. Alright, general health, we don't know. We don't know. Alright, he seems okay. He's getting around alright, but we don't know. Alright, behavior, he's a liar. He's doing stuff all the time. I love him. Some idiot, but he is just not super nice. Alright, the change. See how much bigger the change is for Loki?
Mm-hmm.
It changes him a lot more because his entire identity gets usurped. This is what I'm talking about. Alright? The change is the same. All of that extra stuff, though, is why Loki reacts the way that he does. Versus how Thor acts the way that he does, where Thor is just like, oh, got banished. I guess I gotta get worthy. I met a girl. Woo. And then goes on and does his thing. Whereas Loki has all of this other stuff that he's got to work through. Not saying that each path is better or worse than the other. These are 2 totally different characters that are affected differently. Now, you might say twins are an example of how that works, where you can have the same change and act the same way. Still doesn't happen. I've had twins that react and get better at different rates. Doesn't matter. Just by having a twin, you can never know what it's like to be your twin because you aren't your own twin. All right? So even twins aren't good. Studies And we can't ethically give them the same stuff to go through. Can't do it. I mean, we could, but then I'd go to jail. So pros and cons, can't go to jail. So, any questions?
I've heard a theoretical one that's used a lot for with how kids look at their parents. Like one I heard was two brothers witnessed their father being a drunk, and they were both treated exactly the same. One grew up and became a drunk, and one grew up to be very sober, never touches alcohol at all. And each of them were asked, why do you drink or why do you don't drink? And they both said, because of how my father acted.
Mm-hmm.
How would you explain how each of
they weren't treated the exact same way.
So there would have been a difference.
There's absolutely no way to do it the exact same way. There's no way. Even when I did research for 0.2 seconds before I realized I hated it, you have to read off a script. And I was really bad at it because you had to read off a script and say it the exact same way and maintain the exact same amount of eye contact with every single person in the room to make sure that they got the same experience. But if I look at you and then I look at you, I still looked at you first. So if my dad is a drunk and my brother has a dad that's also a drunk, and it's the same dad who did the same stuff, he might have saw dad drink that fourth beer, whereas I left the room after the third. Get it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any more? Did I hit the time perfectly? Woo! Yeah! Alrighty, guys. This will be online, I'm sure. I don't know when. Whatever. When are you going to give it to me?
I have to talk to Aiden about that. I don't know who I'm supposed to give out the videos to.
We'll figure it out. It'll be fine.
Fork it over.
Yeah, just give it to me now. I'll put it on. So later today, just FYI, if you thought that this was fun and interesting, this was informational. Imagine what a game panel with me is like. Woo! Cutthroat Cosplay is tonight. We're going to have people volunteer to come up and make cosplays out of nothing. And it's going to be awesome and awful and great. So feel free to come to that. That's going to be at 8. So if you guys are done with me, feel free to come up and ask me any questions that you don't want to ask in front of a full room, and otherwise you can go. All right? Yay!